Hi all, hope you're doing well today. Welcome to our first episode of Head Yakka Yarns. My name is Tom Greer-Smith and I'm a psychologist with Outback Futures. I have a passion for health and well-being and just a real curiosity for hearing people's stories. We are developing these Head Yakka Yarns to create a space to talk about people's well-being journeys and how to better mind our health. I feel there are many good yarns that are yet to be told that we could all learn something from. I'm looking forward to sitting down with some wonderful and diverse guests, from graziers to teachers, health professionals, people that, like most of us, have overcome some tough times. It's exciting to be talking today to Selena Gomersall. Selena is one of the founders and CEO of Outback Futures. She is a registered psychologist and has been working with families and communities in rural and remote Queensland for about 10 years now. Some of you may have heard Selena speak at various events about her vision and passion for mental health and well-being in the Outback. Today, Selena is going to be sharing a bit of a personal mental health journey and what this has meant for her. I really appreciate Selena's willingness to allow us an insight into some of the challenges in her life. Selena has an amazing gift to be a vessel of change. I've had the privilege of working alongside Selena, and she always seems to leave you with a renewed sense of purpose and direction. Well, I hope you enjoy our conversation today, and I'll see you on the other side. Thanks, Selena, for having a Head Yakka yarn with us today. We really appreciate you taking the time to speak to us about your role with Outback Futures, but also some of your personal journey with mental health. Selena, for those of us that aren't that familiar with your story, can we start by asking you to give us a bit of a sense of what Outback Futures does?
Well, thanks for having me on Head Yakka Yarns. It's cool to be here. So Outback Futures is a pretty unique approach to mental health and wellbeing for outback communities. It's unique because it was developed in the bush with bush people. And it's ultimately about empowering bush communities to better understand what mental health is, that it's not about disease, it's not about illness, it's about how we function in all areas of our life, to understand just how vital it is to everything, our work, our productivity and our relationships, and how to fight for it, how to advocate for it for ourselves and others. So Outback Futures is basically about harnessing the strengths of bush people and bush communities and helping them to build greater resilience and capacity for the long term.
Yeah, that sounds absolutely fantastic, Selena. And you sound very passionate about mental health. Where did this passion originate from?
I am very passionate about mental health. And it really began back when I was very young. My mother was actually a social worker, a family therapist. And so I grew up listening to her stories about how people tick and how families work. And I grew up understanding that people are complex and that they need support and care. And I remember hearing a lot about people's stories and their capacity to overcome tough stuff and to change their future despite whatever their past had been and some of the things that life had dealt them. So I got very excited about it, even as a kid. But then when I was a teenager, personally, a few very tough things happened at about the same time in my life, which had a really big impact on me. So when I was about 15, we had a house fire and we lost everything in an instant, everything that we'd ever owned, which when you're a teenager, that stuff's pretty important to you. And then not long after that, my father left home. And those two huge experiences of loss sent me into a bit of a tailspin. At a key stage in my life as a teenager, I ended up feeling pretty confused, pretty uncertain, and with lots of questions about myself and about life and where I fit in and what mattered. And I began to develop some pretty significant anxiety, and I battled with depression for some time pretty badly around that time. And in fact, even today, as a supposedly mature and experienced psychologist, that anxiety is still something that I have to manage at various points in my life.
Yeah, absolutely. And that sounds difficult for, any teenager that is trying to find their place in this world. And it sounds like a lot of people may have shared similar experiences. So with that real struggle that you just spoke about then, Selena, what did you do in that moment? How did you move through those difficult times?
Well, yeah, it was a bit of a struggle for a while. My mum was, of course, very much encouraging me to get some help. But I was 18, I was studying to be a psychologist. I didn't want to go and get help. I thought I could deal with it myself. So I fought it pretty hard for quite some time. But eventually I surrendered and I sought some professional help. I got some counselling, some good counselling. And then I also shared my story with some key people in my life so that I had better support around me. And in fact, that counselling journey went on for some time, and I've actually stayed connected to a counsellor. For me, I guess it's a bit like, running a car. You have to get 1,000-kilometre service every now and then to keep it running well.
That's a great analogy.
And so for me, going to my counsellor is like a checkpoint for me when stress gets a bit high and I need someone to process with again. So, yeah, it was a struggle. I didn't want to get help, but eventually I did. And, yeah, it wasn't what I expected. It was much easier than I had anticipated. And it's been a powerful part of my life.
Yeah, and when you say that you fought it for a while, can you recall some of the reasons why maybe you were reluctant to seek help?
Well, yeah, I think for anyone at any age, but particularly when you're a young adult, you pretty much think you've got it all together and that you're invincible. And I think most people, like I did, think I should be able to handle this myself. I should be able to manage this. I should know what to do. It's not that bad. But I guess eventually it got to the point where, the struggle was pretty dark and I didn't have a lot to lose. And I think with the encouragement of the people around me in my friendship circle that I started to share with, and the sense of, well, what have I got to lose if I give this a go? I pushed forward and I tried it. And yeah, it made a big impact.
Yeah, and I'm curious what you thought it might have been like, in terms of, it sounds like a lot of people say that, I've got these different preconceived ideas of what seeking help is like. What were maybe some of your thoughts about what it might be like?
I think, I guess I even though I was studying psychology, I didn't really know what it was going to be like. I didn't really know what to anticipate. It just felt scary. It felt like, why would you want to go and tell a stranger your struggles?
Yeah.
Why would you want to go and pour your heart out and reveal that actually you're not coping? And I think some people imagine that they're still going to be asked to lie on a couch and talk about what it's like in their mother's womb or something like that.
Thanks, Hollywood, for that.
Yeah, but it wasn't like that at all. It was scary. Crossing the shop front the first time I went to see the psychologist was pretty scary. But once we got started, having someone who wasn't in my circle actually made it much easier in the end. And it wasn't nearly as scary once I was doing it as I had expected it to be.
Yeah, absolutely. And what do you think it is about that, having a person not in your immediate circle, that helps us maybe move through that process?
I think sometimes those people who know us very well can have all the biases that go with that. And I think, sometimes people in our world think they know what's best for us. Sometimes we react differently about people that we care about. We want to do what they want us to do. We want to be liked. We don't want to make people upset. Whereas when you're seeing someone who's separate from you, it actually makes it feel safer at times because they don't know you as well as other people do. So they're able to be more objective and you don't have to worry about what they think or whether they like you or not, because that's not their job. So yeah, it's actually worth experimenting with, I think.
You think?
I do.
Yeah, and would you say anything to your 17-year-old self in thinking back to that now?
Yeah, when I think back on that time, and I think, of how that tough stuff threw me into confusion, and I think of, young people, you say, what would you say to yourself at that time? I think I would say that, well, it's a tough one, isn't it? I think I would probably say to her now, give it a go, be a risk taker. You want to be a risk taker. This is a cool risk to take, even though it doesn't feel like it. But I think I would try to help her realise that actually what she'd gone through was pretty big, and that what she was feeling was valid. Because I think at the time I felt like I should be feeling better, I should be doing okay, I should be able to manage this. Yeah. So I think I would say to her, it's okay to not be managing this. It's okay to not be coping. That's valid. That's real.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe with the knowledge that it's real for a lot of other people, and a lot of other people are going through the same thing. Well, thank you so much, Selena, for sharing your personal journey through mental health with us. I think there's some wonderful things that you shared with us there, and we look forward to talking to you further in the future.
Thanks, Tom.
Cheers. There we go. Really interesting to hear about how Selena moved through some of her tough times in her life journey. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Head Yakka Yarns and took away some new learnings. I know I certainly found such a powerful message in Selena's story that it doesn't matter about someone's education level or how successful someone is or any of their life experiences, that no one is bulletproof or immune from mental health struggles. Every one of us may well have times when we need to seek the help of others. And if you feel that you would like to get in contact with the team here at Outback Futures, look up outbackfutures.org.au or follow us on Facebook and Instagram. We would love to hear from you if you have any questions about today's episode, or if you'd like to find out more about how we can work together to make health happen. Finally, thank you, Selena. It was great to have you on the show, and I'm incredibly grateful to be able to share your story. Until we meet again, friends, remember to mind your health.